Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jenna Villani, and I'm the Executive Director of Alumni Relations here at William Patterson University. And I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, STEM at Home with Young Children, Cultivating Science, Engineering, and Math Skills Using Everyday Materials. This session will provide families with a variety of hands-on, minds-on activities that cultivate the necessary skills and dispositions for young children to become the scientists, engineers, and inventors of the future. All activities can be implemented with low-cost or no-cost materials found around the home. No prior knowledge of STEM is needed. Parents can just roll up their sleeves, engage, explore, and share the joy of discovery with their child. This session is offered by the Office of Alumni Relations and the College of Education at William Patterson University. And again, we're thrilled to be here with you all this afternoon. Before we get started, I just want to share some quick details on how today's webinar will work. So first, upon entry, your microphones and videos have been turned off, and we ask that you kindly please keep your microphone muted and video off throughout the presentation. We welcome questions and want this to be an interactive session, so please feel free to type your questions in the chat box throughout the webinar. Please, just a note that today's session is being recorded and will be available on demand after the session. And depending on your settings, you're probably seeing the presentation on your screen and the speakers down the right-hand side of your screen. So just want to share that you can move that around or minimize it if it's ever blocking the presentation for you. And lastly, we will be following up via email to share some materials from today's program. So we are delighted to have with us today Amy Ginsberg, who is the Dean of the College of Education at William Patterson University. And so now it's my pleasure to introduce Dean Ginsberg.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so happy to be able to bring the good work of the College of Education to the community that we serve, especially during these times when folks aren't able to come to our beautiful building at Valley Road, which you can see behind me. So it is my honor to introduce to you our presenters for today's webinar, Adhd Mano and Sue Mankiw. First, I'll tell you a bit about Adhd. Adhd is an early childhood STEM specialist, an adjunct professor, and a professor in residence with William Patterson University. With over 25 years of experience working with young children in a variety of educational settings, she has developed early inquiry-based STEM curricula for early childhood classrooms, museums, and enrichment programs. She recently co-authored the book Teaching STEM in the Preschool Classroom, exploring big ideas with 3 to 5-year-olds. So thank you, Adhd, and Sue. Sue Mankiw is a full professor at William Patterson University, Department of Teacher Education, Pre-K through 12, and the director of Early Childhood Undergraduate Teaching Program. In addition, Sue is a professor in residence working in a preschool center within the WP Early Childhood Professional Development School network. Her scholarly interests include how teachers can use the great outdoors to encourage the development of vocabulary and higher order thinking in young children. So thank you, Sue. And I will turn it over to Adhd and Sue.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Hi, welcome everybody. So before we start, it's like, why is it so valuable to engage our youngsters in STEM experiences? It has been shown that engaging in science, engineering, and math activities cultivate valuable life skills, such as curiosity, creativity, creative thinking, consistency, collaboration, and communication. And these are skills that all learners need for success in school, work, and life. So let's see what we mean by these skills. So for instance, we want our youngsters to be curious, to be observant, to wonder and ask questions, and to be driven to know more about how things work and about our world. So we want to cultivate that. We also want our students or our children to be creative, open-minded, and use their imagination and think outside the box and envision things that cannot be seen, or entertain different interpretations of solutions, and to be our next creative inventors. We want them to be critical thinkers and problem solvers. And someone who thinks critically is able to examine any belief that they have or any form of knowledge that they possess and re-examine it in light of new evidence. So, for instance, if we tell a child, or a child thinks that a cloud is actually cotton candy. It looks the same. Maybe the cotton candy there's cotton candy up in the sky. Well, a young child might believe that at first, but later on in life, they might accumulate more knowledge and experience, and they might question that belief. For instance, if they witness how candy cotton is made, and they might question if really this is how clouds form. How does the cotton candy after it's made get up to the sky? Or if later on they read a book or they experiment in school, and they find out that clouds actually contain water vapor and not sugar. So they can then re-examine their belief and maybe come to a different conclusion. And we want our children to be consistent, meaning that they would continually seek knowledge and be persistent and patient and be fearless, especially when they are faced with failure or difficulties. We want them not to give up and to cope with frustrations. So to continue with this example, we would like our children to continue and pursue answers and see, maybe make an experiment and see, make a cloud in a jar and see how clouds are formed. And we want our children to collaborate and communicate. We want them to communicate through gestures, words, images, drawings, writings. And we want them to collaborate with their peers, with adults, to negotiate, to explain their thoughts, give suggestions or directions. And all these great skills actually appear in a very nice book that Sue is going to introduce us about a girl's journey in discovery. So I'm going to hand it off to Sue.
Welcome, everyone. It's so joyful to be here for this maiden voyage of wonderful early childhood webinars. So yes, we use a wide variety of engaging children's books in our work to support STEM learning in all grades, but most particularly in the early ones. So during our presentation, we are going to share a few books that are available on YouTube. So they are accessible to all of you moms and dads and early childhood teachers. And we'd like to start off with one of our favorites. I'm going to read a few pages from The Most Magnificent Thing by Ashley Spires. So this is a regular girl. Oh, go back, Higgy. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. This is a regular girl and her best friend in the whole world, and they do all kinds of things together. They race, they eat, they explore, they relax, they make things, they unmake things. One day, the girl has a wonderful idea. She's going to make the most magnificent thing. Okay. So here's a few samples from the book. The little girl tinkers and hammers and measures. She tries all different ways to make it better. She makes it square, she makes it round. She gave it legs. She added antennae. But none of them are magnificent. And there we see in the one picture, she gets mad. And finally, she knows how to make the thing magnificent. In the book, we learn that she works carefully and slowly. She tinkers and hammers and twists and fiddles and glues and paints. And one reviewer called this the anti-perfectionist book. Young children learn best through trial and error, and challenges like this are the opportunities that we're talking about to figure out not only what works, but we want children to look at things that don't work. We want them to stick with it. We want them to have great ideas, and we want them to know that they are able to change their ideas. And this is really how we are going to develop, persistence and grit. In my original notes, I said that these are the future skills of scientists and engineers. And then when I thought back on that, I realized that these are the skills that our children are going to need moving forward, no matter what profession they find in life. Okay, Higgy, we go to the next one. The next one is where to get started. So where to get started, your first step for the STEM activities that we are going to talk about today is really just to look around your home. And you'll see here on our slide that we've shown you lots of examples, and all of them are recyclables. Everyday resources like that have rich opportunities for STEM activities. So how do you get started? So what I did to really prepare for this webinar is I ran around my house and I tried to really find, what type of a recyclable material did I have just lying around that might be able to be used for a STEM activity. You'll see there on the right, like we're all having so many deliveries, we're buying things in bulk. So I keep it simple. The box is really one of the richest types of materials that you can use for STEM learning. Keep it simple and keep it open-ended. You want to, in the beginning, just really give the children the materials and give them an opportunity to explore them. Not to come up with something structured or something that is adult-oriented, but just let them simply have the box and see what they'll do with it. Okay. So while they're engaged in the open-ended materials, the children are engaged in decision-making and problem-solving. And by exploring the materials, they're becoming innovators, designers, explorers, artists, collaborators, as they build, sort, design, manipulate, arrange, stack in a variety of ways. Who can say how the simple box became a city? I mean, we don't really know. It could be that an adult read a book about roads, and then suddenly this child decided that the box could become a city in itself. And I love his innovation. If we really look carefully at the illustration here, you can see over in the left-hand corner, he's got a blue bowl. And I kept thinking to myself, it looks like a pond to me. So children can get really very innovative if given the opportunity to not only use the materials that you set out for them, but if they can also go into your cabinets, right? Or their other toy bins, and they can add to the materials on their own. On the left-hand side, what we see there is we see a simple marble run, and it's just made out of tubes and the tops of water bottles. And you're probably looking at that sticky tape and thinking, oh, how can children actually manipulate that or use it? But that actually is duct tape. Now, it could be that an adult helped make that, but there is also a children's duct tape that's now available. That's very easy for children to use. And of course, you have to designate a place for this to happen. Maybe the other side of the box it could happen on. And or you could just use masking tape, which is a very readily available, inexpensive material. Okay. So these are some of the things that we came up with for sparking interests. Of course, reading children's book is a great way, to set the stage. Setting up experiments and designing challenges, which Higi is going to actually demonstrate in a little while. And then while she's demonstrating it, she's also going to add to that some of the ways that you can interact with the materials and what's the adult role during experiments and challenges. But again, I'm going to sort of warn you that in the beginning, you don't want to make this too adult initiated. I mean, later on, you're going to ask questions like, well, what if we changed it this way? Or I wonder what would happen if, or if this is the problem, what kind of solution, could you come up with? But really in the beginning, the first step is to step back a little, as an adult, and just give them the materials and see what they come up with. Even as we were preparing for the webinar, trying to think of all the possibilities of what you could do with the materials we're going to demonstrate, Hagit and I both realized, right, that we could never come up with all of the ideas, because the only way that would be possible would be to put it in the hands of children. Children come up with much more innovative ideas working with STEM materials than adults can ever come up with. But these are some of the ways that you can think about initiating this in your home. Okay. So reading books. So these are two great books that I recommend. Again, they're available on YouTube. If I Built a House is about designing your ideal home, like your dream home. And If I Built a Car, the same. And they're both by Chris Van Dusen. In the next slide, I'm just going to show you some examples. I was working at a program, and their focus was on buildings, and it was a family project. So, you can see that there was some adult initiation taken here. On the right-hand side, what you see is an airport. Don't you love the airplanes? They're amazing. So it's just simple materials, and the pictures that were in the background, I guess the families, of course, had to run those off, but those are all of the people waiting for their luggage or waiting to get their boarding onto the plane. On the left-hand side, I thought this was incredibly innovative. This is a movie theater. So with the child's favorite movie, which was Frozen, and on the top left corner, you'll see that is the seating for the movie theater. So they use those popcorn packing things that we probably have all over our house and we've been trying to throw away or recycle, and they cut out 2 little snacks to have at the movies. So really very simple materials, and you can see that there's a lot of child initiation in both of these. Okay. So our next one is box of text, and box text is a wonderful read aloud, and in the box of text, give me 1 minute to find my notes on box text. Okay, because I want to read you a little bit about that. So in box text, you're at Maker School, and there are blanketeers, spaghetti texts, tin foilers, egg cartoniers, and there's almost every kind of maker you can imagine. But in this story, Meg is the class's first box text, and that makes her very special. One of my students in the program read this book in her clinical practice, and then she asked the children to use boxes at home to create whatever they could come up with. And so you see a slide there with one of the photographs that was shared back. So that's a great thing for teachers out there. You can do a read aloud and then ask the students, of course, to participate at home. And I included A Box Can Be Many Things by Dana Reach and Rav, because that is a book that's much more simpler text. So I would say that's a good book that I would recommend, like to get started with 2 or 3-year-olds. It just names all the different things that you can make with a box. Okay, so now, I'm sorry, I was supposed to introduce you, Hagit. Hagit and I have practiced this 1,000 times, however. The next Hagit is going to show you. She's going to show you some wonderful ways that you can set up a makerspace right in your home. Take it away, Hagit.
Thanks. Okay, so one way to create a safe space for children to build and manipulate different materials is to establish what we call a makerspace, or a maker's box, if you will. And it's filled with the variety of everyday materials, like we talked about, all those recyclables and tools. So in this example, what I did is just took 5 drawers, and in each one we placed different materials. We organized it this way, but you can organize it in any way. At home, you don't need this specific plastic cabinet for it. But what is good about this is that you can wheel it away if you need. It's contained. And you can bring it into a space and then place it somewhere safe if you don't want your child to, depending on their age, if you don't want them to be able to get to these tools and materials. So you can set rules for when and where to play with these materials, and then let just the imagination flow. One thing is good if you are going to place them in different bins, is to label the containers and use images and words so younger children who are pre-readers can know where everything is, and it also makes cleaning up much easier. Let's see. So let's see what's in these drawers. So the first drawer, what I put is just different kinds of tools. And actually, this is the T in STEM. This is the technology part. Usually when we think of technology, we think more of phones and computers, digital technology, but all these tools, scissors and pencils and hole punchers and paper clips, these are all examples of technology. That these are engineers that invented them to make our life easier, or right, or to do a certain task, right? So for instance, if we want to attach a few papers together, we have a variety of options to choose from, right? We can use the paper clips, we can use the binder clip, we can tape, we can glue, we can staple, right? So for children to handle these tools and to know their application and how to use them is really valuable. Now, depending on the child's age, they might need your guidance, right? So their dexterity, their hand dexterity, or if it's not safe enough, for instance, with the stapler, then we need, they would need an adult guidance. Did I forget anything, Sue?
No, I will say though that Cindy put in the chat that another good way to fasten, like thinking about the maze, is to use painter's tape.
Oh, right. So
yeah,
right,
because that's another type of tape, right?
Right. Talk about
come off easily.
There's so many of them, right?
Yeah.
There's you know, these tapes and masking tapes and so on.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So other than tools, we can also, in that makerspace, we can include natural materials. Just go outside and with your child, take a walk and collect twigs, bark, stone, seeds, pods. Children love to create and add to their creations at home, embellish them with these natural materials. You can also, of course, add all those recyclable materials that we talked about, and you know, cotton balls, any empty container, plastic wrap, paper towel rolls, egg cartons, you name it, right? You will get a PDF that will have a list of all the suggested materials. And depending on your mess comfort level, right, you would want to keep these materials away or open all the time. As I said, you might want to cover the workplace depending if they're using glue or not. So you protect your furniture, and then it will make also the cleanup process easier. And these are just examples. Professor Cindy Generelli sent us these two left photos of children creating with these materials. And some are man-made materials and some are natural, and they add them to their art and their construction. Okay, now we're coming up to the part where we're going to show you different ways, different examples of experiments that you can do at home with your children, just using these materials and see cups, different kinds of cups, plastic cups, paper cups, some tape, and band string. So for that, I'm going to actually switch. I'm going to share and switch to a different camera so you can see what I am doing. Hopefully it works. Okay. Can everybody see me? Sue, can you see what I'm doing?
I can, and I'm going to stop my video because I think they could see my video as well. I'm not sure. So it's not distracting. There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's see what you can do just with a stack of paper cups, right? So as Sue was saying, start simple and let your child explore the material first. So you want, if you hand these to a child and just say, hey, play with it, see what you can do, and let them play freely and just observe and see what they come up with. They will probably come up with some kind of build, a way to build. But if they don't, you can introduce a challenge after they explored the materials and say, well, let's see, how many different designs, towers or walls can you build using these cups? So they might, you know, stack them this way like a pyramid, right? This is one way, right? They might do it, they might not do it, that's fine. And then you can say, well, can you think of another way, right? And how many ways can you think? You can, maybe they'll try to balance it this way, right? Or maybe they will try this, right? And go up high. Right? And this can be challenging, of course, and then you know, it will challenge their frustration tolerance also, which is fine, right? It may fall, it may not. And then you'll see if they give up or not. If you can help them, maybe give them suggestions, or let them just figure it by themselves. After they build, let's say some kind of structure, you can ask, okay, well, which one is the most stable? How can we find out? Maybe we can blow on it and see which one is more stable. So this is actually a process that engineers do all the time. They try many different prototypes to see which one, and they test them. They test them each, and they make a lot of changes and revisit the testing and changes. So this simple example, just with cups, can illustrate that. Now, you can also try by just adding one more material, a straw. Try to experiment and tell the child, you give the child a cup and a straw, and just ask, oh, I wonder what we can do with this. And, you know, chances are that they will blow on, right? And then you can see what happens, and maybe what happens if I blow inside? What happens if I blow from this side? What happens if I blow on the base? Right? And you, later on you can challenge and say, oh, I wonder what if I can blow the cup if it's on the floor, on the wooden floor, or on a wooden table, or on a rug, and see what happens. And, you know, this is also an experiment that scientists do. They test different materials in different situations, changing just one variable at a time. So you can also make, I'm sorry, I can hear somebody. Maybe if everybody can mute themselves. Thank you. You can play a game with this where you have a target that, and you and your child can race and see which one gets the cup to the target first. Maybe you want to try and see, maybe a plastic cup behaves different than a paper cup. Try it, see if that works. Maybe a taller cup or a shorter cup behaves differently. Try them all, and then play a game. Who can get to the target first? You can also add a cotton ball and make the cup the target, and then blow on the cotton to hit the target. Okay, so next are two examples of instruments that you can build with cups. So you take a plastic cup and you wrap rubber band around it, and you strum it, you get a sound. Now, if you have different widths and thicknesses of rubber bands, you can place those and see how the sound changes. Maybe you want to strum on the side, on the bottom, right? And see. You can take it to the next step and ask, oh, woo, one flew, and see if there is a different sound if it's a plastic cup, a different plastic, right? Or if it's metal. And try different rubber bands to see what the difference is. So again, scientists conduct these type of experiments all the time where they just change one variable at a time. Now, another instrument that probably everybody knows is the shaker. You can create shakers. You can use transparent cups where the child can see the material that's inside. And then I'm not gonna tape each one now, but you can use masking tape and tape it around here so the content won't fall off. And then experience. So these are plastic beads. These are marbles. These are glass marbles. These are pebbles. And these are paper clips. And you can describe you can even put cotton ball in there. Why not? I can't hear anything, right? So, and let your child decide what material they want to place in and listen to the sound. Now, after they played with it, you can play a game. You can play where you place the material in a cup that you cannot see what's inside, or even, let's say, a paper cup, and you close it and you shake it, and then the child has to guess what's inside after they played and they had some experience with the different materials. And then you could also make duplicates of each of the sounds and play a matching game. See if you can match the same sounds. Now, the last thing we want to show you is how to make a phone. And that is more challenging. This is a more elaborate procedure. So this is a phone that I played with when I was a young child. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. One person talks and the other one listens. You put one on your ear and the other person talks into it, and you have to have it stretched out and talked to talk to each other. And you can talk from one room to another. And it's really, really fun. You actually can whisper and the other person can hear it. And just as a side note, this is because sound can travel through the air, of course. This is how we hear, but sound can also travel through solids, and actually travels much better in solid because it's easier to vibrate within a solid. So you can build this with your child. Depending on the age, they will probably need your help. But for instance, they can make the decisions with you in every step. So for instance, maybe we'll start with paper cups. That's easier. And then you ask, well, we need to poke two holes in these, one in each cup. What tool should we use for that, right? And then see what the child comes up with. They can come up maybe with something that is blunt, right? That has no point, and they can try and see if that works. And or a pencil that has a point, and see if that works. And they can experiment and experience the difference between a blunt and a pointy object. So we'll try this now, right? We can poke the holes. And then the other variable is how long should we make this phone. So depending on where you want to stand, each of you can ask your child, where would you like to be? Maybe in the living room and I'm in the dining room. Well, how long of a string do we need for that? And you can measure that together, right? The other variable is what kind of string should we use, right? It could be plastic or cotton or hemp. Let them choose and try. So you need to thread it and secure it with a paper clip, right? And so this you would need to probably do with the child. And after you play with it for a while, you can then ask the question. Probably what will happen is that the cups will be squished from playing, or they can break. And then you can revisit the design and say, well, maybe we can use another type of cup, not the paper one. What if we use this plastic? Now, that's going to be another challenge of how to make the hole in this plastic. Or maybe we want to go and use a metal container and see how the sound travels using this, and it's sturdier also. So this is, again, this is what engineers do all the time. They optimize their design and improve on it, and look at different options that they have. Okay, I think we are done with this part. And I think Sue, are you there?
I am. Yep, I am unmuting and.
Oh, I have
to start my video again. Yeah.
I have to change my integrated camera. And then,
sure.
Oops, and then go to our okay, take it away.
You have to go to slide, just go to slideshow view. We're still in
I'm
notes.
so sorry.
That's okay.
I thought I was.
Excellent.
Oh, why isn't it doing it? Oh, here we go.
Okay. So we're going to end today's webinar with a selection of children's books that relate to the experiments and the materials that Higgy just demonstrated. And here's just a few that we found, most of which are available on YouTube. Dreaming Up is a wonderful book by Christy Hale that would go nice with our stacking book up high stacking cups activity. It really does show young children's constructions, but then it has real photographs, which children always love, right, of notable architecture from around the world. One of my very, very favorites, The Wind Blew by Pat Hutchins. The wind blew and blew and blew and blew. It blew so hard, it blew everything with it. If you don't know that book already, I think you would really enjoy it. Telephone is a great book by Mac Barnett. He's the author also of Extra Yarn. Maybe you know that one. It's a very popular book. But you don't have too many books available on telephones these days. So that was a nice find. And I think Froggy Plays in the Band is a very easy to find book, even in hardcover or softcover. And our all-time favorite, correct, right? Pete the Cat, Rockin' in My School Shoes. Absolutely wonderful. The one book that's not available on YouTube is How Sound Travels, or How Sound Moves, excuse me. But that's an informational book. And I think informational books are fantastic. Children generally do enjoy looking at actual photographs of things in action, and it really sparks their curiosity. So if you have any informational books, don't hesitate to put those out, even for 3-year-olds. You know, young children, maybe even though some of the text might be difficult, I find some of the illustration is enjoyed by young children. And then, Hagi, are you still there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so then the next part of our presentation relates to questions and answers. So if anybody has a question for us, please put it in the chat box. We are putting together a PDF, so we will give you all of the resources, the names of the books, the links to the YouTubes, correct? The experiments that you demonstrated, Higgy, and am I missing anything else?
Also, if you want, we encourage you to visit the William Patterson Early Childhood Learning Community on, it's a Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on Facebook, you can join us, and we post a lot of different materials there, not just STEM related, anything.
Yeah. So do we have any questions?
So I just encouraged everyone to ask some questions here. Here we go. Looks like we have our first one. So it's Sue. Can you speak to the importance of asking open-ended questions as conversation starters?
Yeah. I mean, I think we spoke to that a teeny bit, right? But just even very open-ended questions like, I wonder what would happen if we have a problem. How can we solve this? Or really just not asking so much like those types of questions that, such as that are less open-ended, like, tell me what this is. You don't want to say those direct questions, but you want to just leave it open as to, what can you tell me about what you built today? And really leave it up to the child to come up with the answers. Because sometimes we'll say things like, oh, I really like your house. And they're like, that's not a house, that's a stadium. They have so many bigger ideas that they want to express that sometimes if we don't ask the questions in an open-ended way, if they're very adult initiated, sometimes that closes them down and they'll just, and not really respond using all of the language that they actually have. So yes, open-ended questions are very important, and really making sure that you shift it towards having the conversation start with whatever the child is thinking. I hope that answered your question, and if not, please add any other things that you're thinking about.
Great, thank you. Okay, looks like we have it.
Yeah, we have another. Go ahead.
Okay, so not so much a question as a comment. The STEM activities can be easily expanded to be STEAM by introducing artists to children. Artists such as Picasso, Calder, and Portray all come to mind. They have used unexpected materials to create interesting works of art. I have been teaching courses like this for years, and it's a great springboard for cultural and emotional literacy as well. Any comments on that?
No, I mean, for sure, any art book, especially for math, as the attendee pointed out. I mean, for numbers, and we didn't touch on math so much here in this presentation, but for shapes and numbers, any art books are fabulous.
Great. So we have another question here. Sue, can you share your thoughts about children having opportunities to revisit their iterations, to revise and revisit?
Oh, yes, that's very important. I think one of the things we tend to do as parents and also as teachers is to immediately ask children to take their creations and just put them away. It's time to clean up. That's really very common, I know, especially in our preschool classrooms. But when it comes to this kind of work, right, where children are becoming makers, they need the opportunity, the time, and the space to be able to go back, to revise, to tinker a little bit more, to really think about their creations and maybe come up with a new creation, especially if they're trying to work out a problem. And solutions don't come automatically to any of us. So yes, leaving time and space, I think those are the two most important things. So if you can set up a little corner of the room or even a box, right, that the children can just put their creations so that they can go back to them later in the day or even the following day, that would be lovely.
We have another question here. What are some things that we can say to parents so that they will encourage children to experiment on their own and not do the projects for them?
I see who's asking that question. Lauren Dutch. That is an excellent question. So one of the things you want to do is in the very beginning, if you're going to encourage this kind of work, is not really tell them so much about the things that they can add in, right? Tell them just to let the children experiment with the materials. I think all of us really need to understand how innovative children can be. And the only way we're going to get to the heart of that is to give the children the time to just explore the materials. And even in the illustrations that we showed, we had the little guy in the box with the crayons. I would never have given him the crayons straight out. If he went to go get them, that's wonderful. That's, you know, an idea that he has. I would have just given him the boxes. Just give him the boxes and see what he does with it. Does he take them apart? Does he stack them? Does he make a boat? Does he go inside of them? You know, what is the creation that he made? So in the beginning, I think sometimes we give too much guidance. You know, you could do this, 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 and this. If you were to use our webinar, I would say in the beginning, just tell them to give children cups and document what they do and just see what happens. Don't give it as much guidance as we tend to do.
Thank you. Any final questions before we wrap up? Okay. I think, okay, we do have one more question here. Please provide some suggestions on how you can engage a child in STEM activities who is creative but is not into arts and crafts.
You want to answer that one, Higgy?
Sure. I mean,
thinking about the materials that you introduced.
I think the examples that we just gave do not. I mean, you can always add art to it, but they, in themselves, are not very art oriented. So I think you know, any type of engineering challenges would lend itself to play without needing crayons or markers or pencils, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would also encourage to see why the child is not doesn't like art. It could be that it's something that has to be that it's difficult for them to hold a brush or a pencil, and their shoulder muscles are not strong enough. But that's a side issue. Just to make sure that there's no why the child doesn't like to draw. And my son did not like to draw, and today he's a computer engineer. So you don't have to do to include art in STEM experiences at all.
Okay,
Sue, do you want to add anything to?
No, I see we have another question. Is it helpful for children who have ADHD?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I agree with the geek. Yes.
Oh, definitely. And again, I will bring my son as also and other children that I have taught. Open-ended materials like this with no instructions, that the child can choose their own materials, the time, how much time they want to spend doing it, and they can choose other materials to introduce it. That is the best activities for kids with ADD. This is where they thrive. Most of them are actually very creative and have a hard time sitting down and listening to instructions. They would rather get up and do and experience. And this is exactly what we want them to do in these types of experience.
Yeah. And I would just add that secondary to ADHD, although it's not really, part of that disability, there's always a lot of anxiety for children with ADHD, because they're always trying to keep up with the adult initiated type of activities. So the fact that you take that stress away and that anxiety because it's so child initiated, I think is another bonus for these types of STEM activities. Anything open-ended that's child initiated and where they can feel empowered really helps not only with ADHD, but any of the other disabilities that make children very anxious.
But it also helps with self-esteem. Any child
Exactly.
with self-esteem, and as we said, and cultivating all these other skills that we talked about. And yeah.
Great. Well, we're coming up on 1:30. Of course, we'll take any other questions that come in the next minute or so. But at this time, I would just like to thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. A special thanks to Hagit and Sue for putting together this wonderful session. And before we wrap, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge Cindy Generelli, who is the Director of Early Childhood Education Innovation, who made this session possible. So I'd also like to extend a huge thank you to Cindy as well.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy.
Yes, thank you, Cindy. Thanks for the opportunity. It was great.
And
great, thank you.
Just a reminder, we have another session coming up next week, so don't forget to join us for session 2, which is entitled No Resources, No Problem, Supporting Early Childhood Families and Educators with Meaningful Interactions with Materials Found at Home. And that's next Wednesday, August 5th, 12:30 to 1:30. Okay, so I don't see any other questions here. So thanks again and have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.